Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 3 of Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro, Second Attack. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So, it would seem as though things have sort of returned to the status quo after that whole thing at the zoo. And I mean, probably for the best, honestly, considering what Nagatoro was thinking going into that whole ordeal. So it seems as though the plot here is that, Nagatoro's spending a lot of time with Senpai here, but she's sort of neglecting her friends. So perhaps she should go spend time with them. And it's probably a bit of a mixed blessing, considering she specifies, there will be girl talk, which is normally no good. And if that weren't enough, she sort of left her phone. I feel like this is the beginning of another farce. So it seems as though Senpai has decided to attempt to return the phone. I'm not sure I necessarily sympathize with Senpai here, there being separate floors per grade, but I can certainly understand this sort of fish out of water feeling where he very clearly stands out, he doesn't know where he's going. And, people who are much more confident are sort of coming up to him. I mean, there's a bit of an inherent problem here in that Senpai is only trying to find Nagatoro based on her surname, and, that may or may not work depending on the size of the class here, It's not a given that everybody will know everybody else. And I guess what's worse is that Hayachi, which Nagatoro's friends call her, is, it's sort of like an abbreviated nickname or a truncated nickname. I'm struggling to think of an example in English, but, that's not actually her name, and therefore, Senpai's gonna kind of struggle to find her. It's sort of an interesting thing, too, that referring to people by their first name in Japan is a bit of a sign of, if not familiarity, intimacy or something like that. It's not something you just do with anybody. And I'd imagine it's going to be a very big bridge for Senpai to cross eventually. He doesn't even know her first name now, but, it's not something he's going to call her lightly by any means. So unfortunately for Senpai, he seems to have been cut off by a flank attack, as it were. All of Nagatoro's friends are here and congregating in this room, and I feel like he's complicating the issue. He could just say, Nagatoro forgot her phone, I'm here to return it, here you go, bye. And just dip before anybody does anything, but he's made the singularly bad decision of hiding in the closet. So, surely only good things can come from something like this. Because not only is he eavesdropping on Nagatoro and her friends, I don't know, just sort of hiding in the supply closet doesn't look good either. So I guess naturally, the conversation among Nagatoro and her friends immediately turns into gossiping about boys and boyfriends and all that stuff. I can't imagine Senpai would be all that interested in this topic of conversation anyways, but, surely things are gonna start getting uncomfortable. Especially as the conversation sort of shifts to him. I can only imagine that's going to come up. Nagatoro's friends... I don't know, I feel like they're going to tease her about it, seeing as how she just sort of seems to be in that kind of a relationship with her friends, where it's like, oh, you like that nerdy guy? Ha ha ha. It's weird that there's almost like a food chain here. Okay, so it's not even that they're talking about Senpai, they're saying, what type of boy do you like? And she's like, oh, she's just trying to be evasive. Oh dear. So she actually gave a concrete answer, and it's a concrete answer that gives very little doubt to us, the audience, that she is in fact referring to Senpai. That's a pretty concrete admission right there. Now that said, her friends can't help but make fun of her for it, and I think that's, kind of misguided, but, I guess that has to do somewhat with the circle she's cultivated. So this is where things get real. Nagatoro notices she doesn't have her phone. It's probably in the club room, so that sort of invites her friends to pick on her some more, saying like, oh boy, you spend a lot of time there with a boy. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, Senpai has decided to, I guess, intervene by rattling the closet. Knowing him, it was probably an accident, but he sort of seemed to have saved Nagatoro from more ribbing. Yeah, this is rather awkward, isn't it? It's like, whoops, you were just sort of hiding in here this whole time. How much did you hear? So, I guess it's good in that Senpai actually had her phone and was able to give it to her. That probably softens things a little bit. It's not like he was just sort of in there to eavesdrop. Oh dear. It's interesting how she says that this was actually creepy, in contrast with how seemingly everything he does is just kind of generally creepy. Now, nevertheless, Nagatoro is a little unsettled about how much Senpai may or may not have heard. If he were a smart man, this would be leverage. He could turn the tables and start teasing her now, but it's not really in his nature to do something like that. Probably for the best, if I'm honest. So I guess the new plot is the school marathon. It seems like Senpai is keeping up with that, jogging regimen. Oh dear. So, I guess the idea here was he wants to do better than Nagatoro at the school marathon, but seeing as how he just shattered his ankle, it seems like this might not be likely. Oh dear. So I'm not a physician or anything, but it seems to me that running on an injured ankle is probably not advisable. You know, my joints are in pretty good condition, all things considered, and frankly, I'd like to maintain them in this good condition. And I feel like if I were to have injured my ankle, the first thing I probably wouldn't do is run on it. Nevertheless, Nagatoro and her friends are just sort of goading Senpai into a race, so, you know, I guess he's gonna have to push it if he doesn't want to lose. You know, it's interesting that they're just sort of teasing him with the parable of the tortoise and the hare. And I guess it's even more interesting that the club president has decided to wear a bunny suit. I mean, it's a bold choice if nothing else, but you know. Oh my god. Of course it has to be performance art. I hate performance art. It's usually very, very stupid. You know, it's basically just being a jerk in public and claiming that there's, you know, a message behind it or a point to it. But, you know, wearing a bunny suit smacks more of exhibitionism than it does of performance art to me. So nevertheless, this has become more of a personal matter here. You know, it's not just that Senpai has to run faster than Nagatoro and her friends, it's that they sort of collectively have to be better than the club president. It's almost kind of, juvenile in a way. You know, Nagatoro has to prove she's the superior woman. And to be fair, you know, I don't think Senpai needs too much convincing one way or the other. It's also interesting that everybody's sort of pushing Senpai to run faster and faster, but, you know, nobody really knows what he's working with here, with that injured ankle and all. And to be fair, it's not like he told them. It is also interesting that, by Nagatoro's own admission, you know, he's doing pretty well. And if he's doing good enough to get her attention on an injured ankle, you know, surely he's improving. Oh dear, so here we have it, you know, the ankle's acting up again. It is interesting that he's sort of standing on both feet, putting weight on both ankles, you know. I feel like if it's really truly injured, he might want to, you know, not put too much weight on it. So this is nice. I'm really digging this, you know, Nagatoro is taking it upon herself to help Senpai finish the marathon. You know, it's like, yeah, you're injured, but, you know, I don't care if it torpedoes my performance in this marathon, I'm going to help you. And frankly, good on her for doing that. You know, I feel like Nagatoro almost has a bit of an ulterior motive here. Especially in light about what she said earlier, you know, a guy I like to hang out with is a guy I like, you know. All that stuff. You know, I feel like she's doing this really because she has a vested interest in Senpai, and I don't know, you have to be nice to him sometimes, you can't tease him too much. And I guess things have changed a little bit considering that there's like an actual injury involved here. You know, it's not fair to pick on him for that. So, if the situation weren't bad enough, it seems like his ankle's actually getting worse. And I guess, being somewhat cognizant of this, Nagataro's going so far as to offer to carry him. And while the gesture is nice, I'm not sure about the logistics of this. Because on the one hand, surely Nagatoro can't be much stronger than Senpai. And Senpai's definitely going to weigh more than her just by virtue of being taller. And, all that aside, what's he going to hang on to? Surely there's no good option here. So I feel like, if anything, this is going to be a bit of a return to the status quo. Senpai's hanging on, but he might start to slip and grab on to the only thing available, which surely will land everybody in a bit of hot water. I mean, I'm sure Nagatoro, given the circumstances, would be willing to sort of just brush it off, but at the same time, it's going to make everything a whole lot more awkward. I mean, Senpai's already aware of how awkward this really is, So it's interesting that even though Nagataro's struggling to sort of carry on, she wants to do it if only to beat the art club president. And I guess good on her for being so determined. So Nagataro's friends have showed up just in the nick of time here. The cavalry has arrived, and they've decided to all sort of carry Senpai, and I don't know. I know I certainly wouldn't enjoy something like that. I'm short, I'm a man that I like being on the ground, but I'm wondering if maybe this doesn't sort of violate the spirit of a marathon. The idea is you're supposed to run. Maybe you could cut an exception for somebody who's injured, but I don't know, this seems like a bout of honor where they want to defeat the art club president for being, I don't know, perceived as competition for Nagatoro. Uh-oh. Yeah, there we have it. I guess you have violated the rules of the marathon. I mean, they just sort of go along with it. What else can you do, really? But well, I guess the art club president wins this round. So it's interesting that now Nagatoro hasn't been in school for a couple days and she's not really answering any messages. I mean, I would have assumed this had to do something with the marathon, but Senpai immediately assumes it has to do with hiding in the locker. And, I mean, that seems a little unreasonable, considering that whole marathon business, If she really didn't want anything to do with him, she wouldn't have helped him during the marathon. I guess good on Senpai for sort of working up the courage to talk to Nagatoro's friends. That's not something he would normally do, but I guess Nagatoro is worth it. So I guess, naturally Nagataro's friends can't just be helpful, they have to tease him a little bit about being concerned. But nevertheless, he continues to be concerned, and as it turns out, she just has a cold, which, isn't really a big deal, except for when it is for the purpose of drama. So, Senpai is sort of being tasked with bringing her homework and class assignments and all that. That's sort of like a standard trope, and perhaps something that really happens. But it seems to me we're being set up for something here. Senpai's not only brought the classwork, he's also brought a gift, which, I guess that's a nice thought, but it seems to me that this is a bit outside the norm here, and therefore, it might not get him in trouble per se, but it's definitely going to open him up to ridicule. It probably doesn't help that he's sort of entering uninvited, too. Alright, so he's been caught, red-handed as it were, and I'm wondering, are we supposed to recognize this character? Because I don't. Whoever she is, she's sort of, Oh, okay, so she's aware of who Senpai is by reputation, if not by appearance. Alright, so that's the score. She's Nagataro's older sister. I guess that makes sense given the vague resemblance in the attitude. Senpai's got his work cut out for him if he's gonna have to deal with her as well. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.